Freddy versus Jason. Take your bets. Hey there guys, and welcome back to Dino Reacts. So we made it to the crossover event, Freddy versus Jason. Now guys, right off the bat, I'm going to let you know I absolutely love this movie. Out of most of the Friday the 13th movies, this is definitely one that I've seen so many times. As I've said in previous videos, I'm not a huge fan of the Friday movies. I do definitely enjoy them. There are some I absolutely love. But with the big three, Jason has always been the least interesting or the least favourite of mine. But as usual guys, I am going to go through my positives and my negatives on this movie. We're going to start with the positives, and we're actually going to start with the two big bads of this movie, Freddy and Jason. So Freddy Krueger guys, for me, is perfect in this movie. What I like about this movie is they pretty much capture the best parts of both characters and put it into the film itself. So Freddy Krueger in this movie, you know, he's everything you want out of Freddy Krueger. He's quite scary, he's fun, you know, he has his jokes in there, but they don't go overboard like Freddy's Dead. And with Jason, we get good old-fashioned classic Jason Voorhees. There's no dead-out version of him in this one. You know, we don't have Uber Jason. We just have zombified Jason Voorhees, who is kind of, you know, the height of his fame, Jason. So Jason from Jason Part 6, Jason from Part 7. We get that great Jason in this one. Unfortunately, he's not played by Kane Hodder. But the Jason we get in this one still holds up. As well as that, we get a new final girl in this movie in the character of Laurie. Now for me, I actually don't think Laurie gets enough credit for her status as final girl. She pretty much takes on Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees in this movie and whoops both of their asses. I've always been a fan of her as a final girl. Is she one of my favourites? No, but in the Friday series especially, I do think she deserves a little bit more credit, and that's the same for the Nightmare series. My second positive guys in this movie is the directing and the script. So the script in this one is razor sharp. So as I've said previously, Freddy vs. Jason took years and years and years to be made, and it actually went through multiple different scripts throughout that time. So the best writers in Hollywood were coming up with ways to bring Freddy and Jason together, and for years no one could come up with a way to do that. So in the end, we do get a script where Freddy and Jason are pitted against each other, but the script that came before that, you know, we had multiple different versions. At one point we had another character who was going to be as big as Freddy and Jason. He was a cult leader, and he ran this cult with Fred heads who were like Freddy fanatics, and they eventually brought Freddy back from the dead. We also had another script where Freddy Krueger was actually a counsellor back when Jason Voorhees drowned, and it's essentially shown that Freddy was the one who killed Jason back at the camp. So as I said, there's a lot of different scripts, but the one we got was a fairly simple idea, and it was a classic way to bring both characters back and not ruin any of their history. So Freddy, essentially, it's been shown that the town of Elm Street has forgotten about Freddy Krueger, so they're no longer afraid of him. And Freddy essentially works by bringing fear to the kids of Elm Street. So knowing that, you know, there is this other famous slasher out there called Jason Voorhees, Freddy brings him back from hell to kill the teens of Elm Street and bring fear back to the town. The other side characters in this one, so let's say the other teenagers and just the townspeople of Elm Street, are also quite cool. So you do get a very good mixture of Elm Street characters and Friday the 13th type characters. The main cast themselves would be more of the Elm Street type characters, you know, the teenagers going to school every day, you know, wondering why they're having these strange dreams while there's a murderer in the neighborhood. The other characters we get, you know, you get kind of the more stoner party type characters as well that you would get in Friday the 13th. Now they do take a secondary role, they're a little bit more there just for a body count, but I just thought again it was a fun way to meld both types of teenagers into one movie. We also get some great kills in this movie, and it's definitely helped by the directing of Ronnie Yu. So the colours in this one, you know, we got blood splattering everywhere pretty much throughout the movie. We got decapitations, we got impalements. There is a lot going on. The standout killer for me is definitely the character of Trey, so Gibbs' boyfriend, who he essentially gets crushed between a bed and snapped in half. For me, that is definitely the standout kill, but this is also a movie where we get so many different kills and so many creative ways to kill people. You know, going from the dream world into reality with Jason and Freddy, both characters tend to kind of do their murders in different ways, so it was fun again just to kind of push that together and see what happens. Speaking of dream sequences, I absolutely loved them also in this movie. You know, there's a scene with Laurie, she's in the police station, and it's her first introduction to Freddy. That was done very well. You know, she is in the house from the original Elm Street 1428. It was great to see that house back in the movie again, the way they just included that in there, and it was done very neatly. You know, there wasn't a lot of explanation that needed to go into that. Another dream sequence is the character of Mack. So he's kind of your main Elm Street type character you see in this. He reminds you the most of the original Freddy movies. Essentially his brother died from Freddy in his sleep, and Mack is convinced, you know, something killed him in his dreams. But the character, you know, he doesn't have a lot to do in this movie, but just the portrayal by the actor who plays him, the character himself, how terrified he is of Freddy Krueger, sells the role straight away. I did also like that they brought back classic locations for this movie. Of course, with a Freddy vs. Jason movie, it's kind of guaranteed that you gotta have Elm Street, and you do really have to have Camp Crystal Lake. And throughout this movie, you see both locations. They also bring back Weston Hills from Nightmare 3. They bring back the 1428 Elm Street house. So there's a lot of classic set pieces you see in this that just connects both franchises together. There are also a lot of standout scenes in this one. We got the cornfield scene, which is kind of like a big ass Friday the 13th scene. It's Jason going through a cornfield and just killing a bunch of teenagers, anyone that steps on his way, while he is on fire. I love that scene. It is also a standout in the movie, and it just kind of shows you who Jason really is. He could be on fire and he will just keep walking, he will keep killing. Luckily he does get outed, but he keeps going and he keeps slashing and hacking his way through the corn. And going back to the character of Mack, that scene shows you everything that Freddy Krueger is. The cornfield scene shows you everything that Jason Voorhees is. So I like that both villains essentially get, you know, a lot of screen time, and are not just constantly pushed back and forth. They have their own separate storylines until they meet in the middle. And my last positive, guys, with this movie is the final act. So the last act of this movie goes batshit balls to the wall crazy, and we get Freddy and Jason just hack and slash each other until there is no more. It's everything you want in a final act of a versus movie. For me, I can't think of any other movie like this that pulls it off the way Freddy vs. Jason does. You get both characters and they essentially just tear into each other and give the fans everything that they could want. It's a great sequence, and it's a long sequence as well. There is two separate fights in this movie, but just the last fight, it goes on for so long. You know, Freddy's arm gets pulled off, Jason gets stabbed with his own machete, we have a decapitation, you know, we have an entire cabin blowing up. A lot happens in that final act, so even if you haven't seen this movie, that final act alone is a reason to see Freddy vs. Jason. Now, as much as I absolutely love this movie, it still does have some negatives. My first negative, although I love the directing by Ronnie Yu, is the lighting in places. So the lighting throughout the movie, you know, it's quite well lit, it's a good movie to watch, but there are parts in the movie, especially the first fight between Freddy vs. Jason, that I just didn't like the lighting they use. You know, a lot of the times with the dream sequences, or just seeing Freddy in the dream world, he is always surrounded by red colours. For me, that tends to take me out of a movie. It looks a little bit more like a set than anything else, so I wasn't a fan of that. And also with Jason, he is kind of surrounded by more blue type colours. There's also a part in the movie where they both fight and they meet and everything kind of turns green. I wasn't a fan of that. I love the blood and the way they kind of sprayed it everywhere. You know, even if they had different colours for that, I wouldn't mind. Just the lighting used in certain scenes, I wasn't a huge fan of. Also, speaking about that first fight, there's a moment in that fight where Jason kind of gets revealed that he's scared of water, and Freddy kind of finds his fear deep down. Now for me, after watching all these Friday movies, that made absolutely no sense, because we've seen Jason, you know, swim under the water. We've seen him literally on a boat traveling to New York surrounded by the ocean. So how he is scared of water, I don't know where they got that from. I know Ronnie Yu didn't watch the other movies in the series before he made this one, and maybe, you know, while they were making the movie, he just wanted to throw that in as a plot device. It works in a sense, again, if you forget Jason in water in previous movies, and I get what they were doing, but just overall, when you watch the whole thing as a series, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Although I was happy they brought back Weston Hills and a lot of plot devices like Hypnosil in those scenes, what I wasn't a fan of was that whole stoner sequence we got in the movie. You know, I get again what they were doing, it was a fun sequence, but it reminded me a little bit too much of things like Freddy's Dead, where Freddy is essentially this kind of worm-like creature thing. It just was silly, you know, it doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. It's a little bit more of a serious movie, this one. Although it has fun parts throughout, of course, that just tipped it overboard a little too much. Wasn't a fan of it, wasn't really even a fan of that stoner character. I can't remember his name, so that would be my second negative. Also, although I did love Freddy and Jason in this one, there's not much wrong with them at all. I wasn't a huge fan of their makeup. Freddy's especially, it looked too rubbery in this movie. You know, on shots where we weren't looking at his face directly, it was absolutely fine. But close-up shots, you could see the prosthetics, you could see that, you know, it did look too rubbery. Again, like Freddy has been seen as in the past, it was a bit more like a pizza face. Jason as well, they for some reason stuck with the hair on him. I've never liked Jason when he has hair on him. He was also a little bit too thin, I suppose, in this movie for me. You know, he wasn't as broad and big as Kane Hodder. Now, I've said already I'm not a huge fan of Kane Hodder, but I do wish he was in this movie. I get what they were doing with the movie. They wanted to bring Jason back and he needed to be bigger than Freddy. Freddy needed to be shorter, just so there was that difference between them. But again, guys, there's not a lot of negatives with this movie. Even thinking of it now, I also love the town, how they pretty much just forgot about Freddy, how they were drugging the kids not to dream about him, and they were shipping the rest of the kids off to Weston Hills. There was a lot to like in this movie. I'm definitely a huge fan of it. Even the promotion of the movie at the time, you know, they had a weigh-in at one point between Freddy versus Jason. This is also the only Friday the 13th movie, I think up until that time, that really had a big premiere. No other movie in the series had a premiere, and that really was there for the fans. So there was a lot of fan service going into this movie. You can get the DVDs, you can see a lot of the behind the scenes things that they did for the promotion of the movie. All in all, guys, I do think this is a great movie. It was definitely rough to bring two different franchises together with many sequels behind them. So although it does have negatives, the positives definitely outweigh them. Would I recommend this movie? 100%. If you want a good time with some popcorn, this is a movie to check out. It's all out action, it's all out blood, gore, and everything you want out of a Friday the 13th movie and a nightmare movie. So guys, that is my review of Freddy vs. Jason. We are nearly at the end of this Friday series. Next up will be the remake or the reimagining, whatever way you want to think of it, of Friday the 13th. I can't wait to get into that one, but for now, guys, if you liked Freddy vs. Jason, comment below, let me know what you loved about the movie. And as always, if you didn't, let me know your thoughts also. Don't forget, guys, subscribe to the channel just so you don't miss another video. And until next time, Heidi ho.